I discovered my wife cheating with her boss in our bed, so I hired his ex-wife's lawyer to ruin him for what he did to both our families. The day the truth came crashing down started with a small, out-of-place detail. A pair of cufflinks, not mine, sat in a dish on the nightstand. They were silver, engraved with initials that didn't match anyone I knew. The dish was where my wife, Emily, kept her earrings, and I'd never seen those cufflinks before. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was home early from my job as a project manager. Emily was still at her marketing firm, or so I thought. The cufflinks bothered me, but I didn't jump to conclusions. Things get misplaced. People borrow stuff. There's always an explanation. Except, as I stood there staring at them, a knot formed in my stomach, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The bedroom was the same as always, king-sized bed with a gray comforter, her side cluttered with books and a half-empty coffee mug, my side neat except for a charging cable. But those cufflinks were an intruder. I picked them up, turned them over, and noticed they were heavy, expensive. The initials were TR. Nobody in our circle had those initials. Not her dad, not her brother, not any friend I could recall. I put them back and told myself to wait. Emily would be home soon. Maybe she'd explain. She didn't get home until after 10 p.m. that night. Her hair was down, her blouse slightly wrinkled, and she smelled faintly of cologne, not her usual floral perfume. She said she'd been at a client dinner, something about a new campaign. I nodded, didn't mention the cufflinks, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to that dish, those initials, that smell. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I opened her jewelry box. Tucked under a velvet tray was a note, folded small. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was sharp, masculine. It said, "Tuesday, same time?" Tuesday was yesterday. I'd been at work. She'd been at the office. That's when I started paying attention to things I'd ignored. Her phone was always face down now. She'd changed her passcode a few months ago, saying it was for work security. She'd been taking calls in the other room, closing the door. I wasn't a paranoid guy, but those cufflinks and that note weren't random. I decided to look deeper. I checked our shared laptop, the one she used for personal stuff. Her email was logged out, but I found an old backup of her calendar in the cloud. It had entries for meetings, at odd hours, always when I was at work. One was marked TR home. My home. Our home. I didn't confront her yet. I needed more. I went to the guest room, where we kept old paperwork, and found a bank statement from her personal account. There was a charge for a lingerie store I didn't recognize, dated 2 weeks ago. I'd never seen her wear anything new. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering who she was when I wasn't around. The cufflinks were still in the dish. She hadn't moved them. It was like she didn't care if I saw. The next few days were a blur of suspicion and quiet rage. I didn't confront Emily, but I watched her every move. She acted normal, made coffee in the morning, kissed me goodbye, texted me about dinner plans. But the signs were piling up. Her phone buzzed constantly, and she'd tilt the screen away when I was near. She started wearing makeup to casual, work events, and her gym bag always had a fresh set of clothes I didn't recognize. I felt like a stranger in my own house, piecing together a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I decided to dig deeper. I had access to our home's security system, a basic setup with cameras at the front door and garage. I'd never checked the footage before, never had a reason to. I logged into the app and scrolled back to the previous Tuesday, the day the note mentioned. At 2:17 p.m., a black SUV pulled into our driveway. A man got out. He was tall, in a suit, and carried a briefcase. He didn't knock. He used a key. My key. Or one Emily had given him. The camera didn't catch his face clearly, but I knew it wasn't a delivery guy or a neighbor. He left at 4:53 p.m., just before I got home from work. I went back further. The same SUV showed up 3 times in the past 2 weeks, always when I was at the office. Always mid-afternoon, always for a couple of hours. I saved the footage to a USB drive. My hands were shaking, but I stayed calm. I needed to know who he was. I remembered the initials on the cufflinks. TR. Emily's boss was Thomas Reed. I'd met him at her company's holiday party last year. Tall, slick, always smiling like he owned the room. Married, with a daughter in high school. It had to be him. I checked Emily's work email, which she sometimes left open on our laptop. There was a thread with Thomas, mostly about projects, but one email from him said, "Can't wait for our next meeting." No context, no details, just a winking emoji. It was dated a week ago. I took a screenshot. My stomach churned, but I kept going. I found her old phone in a drawer, one she hadn't used in a year. It still had charge, and her iCloud was logged in. There were texts from a number labeled T. They were careful, vague, but one said, "Your place tomorrow?" She'd replied, "Yes." That night, I couldn't look at her. She asked why I was quiet, and I said I was tired. I wasn't tired. I was planning. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not in my house. Not with him. The betrayal wasn't just about Emily. It was about Thomas Reed, a man who thought he could walk into my home, use my bed, and leave without consequences. I didn't know him well, but I knew his type: arrogant, entitled, the kind of guy who thought rules didn't apply to him. I started researching him. His LinkedIn was polished, full of buzzwords like leadership and innovation. He'd been with the company for a decade, climbing the ladder to VP of marketing. His profile picture showed him in a tailored suit, grinning. I wanted to wipe that grin off his face. I found his wife's name through a company newsletter Emily had saved. Laura Reed. They'd divorced 2 years ago, and it hadn't been quiet. A quick search pulled up a local news article about their settlement. Laura had taken him to court over hidden assets and won a hefty payout. Her lawyer was mentioned, Karen Walsh, a divorce attorney known for tearing apart cheating spouses. I bookmarked her website. If anyone could make Thomas pay, it was her. I kept gathering evidence. I installed a small camera in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf. It wasn't about catching them in the act, I already knew enough. It was about leverage. The next Tuesday, the SUV showed up again. The camera caught Thomas walking in, loosening his tie, carrying a bottle of wine. Emily was already home, waiting. They didn't go to the living room. They went upstairs. I didn't watch the rest. I didn't need to. I had timestamps, license plates, and his face on video. I contacted Karen Walsh the next day. Her office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel. I emailed her a summary of what I'd found, leaving out the emotional parts. She called me within an hour. Her voice was calm, professional, but she didn't sugarcoat anything. She said Emily's affair, especially in our marital home, gave me a strong case for divorce. She also said Thomas's history of workplace affairs could be a liability for him, especially if HR got involved. She agreed to take my case and suggested coordinating with Laura Reed to hit Thomas from both sides. I didn't tell Emily I'd hired a lawyer. I didn't tell her I knew about Thomas. I wanted everything in place before she saw it coming. She kept up her routine: work, gym, late nights, oblivious to the storm I was building. Every time she smiled at me, I saw her with him. Every time she touched me, I thought of that wine bottle. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Karen Walsh moved fast. She filed for divorce the day after our first meeting, citing infidelity and emotional distress. The paperwork was thorough, listing every piece of evidence I'd collected: security footage, screenshots, the note, even the cufflinks. She advised me to freeze our joint accounts and secure my assets before Emily could react. I followed her instructions. I transferred my savings to a new account, canceled shared credit cards, and had my paycheck rerouted. Emily didn't notice. She was too busy with her meetings to check the bank statements. Karen also dug into Thomas Reed's professional life. She had contacts in the corporate world and confirmed he was already on thin ice with his company. 2 former employees had filed complaints about inappropriate behavior, but HR had swept them under the rug. My evidence, particularly the video of him entering my home during work hours, could tip the scales. Karen drafted a letter to the company's HR department, anonymous but detailed, with timestamps and license plate numbers. She didn't send it yet. She wanted to time it for maximum damage. I met Laura Reed a week later. Karen arranged it at her office. Laura was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, with a quiet intensity. She didn't waste words. Her divorce from Thomas had been brutal. He'd hidden income, lied about assets, and dragged out the process to wear her down. She'd won, but it cost her years of stress. When I showed her the footage of Thomas in my house, she didn't flinch. She said it was classic Thomas, always chasing something new, always thinking he'd get away with it. She agreed to work with Karen to reopen her settlement case, claiming Thomas had violated financial disclosure terms by funneling money to his affairs. The plan was coming together. Karen would hit Emily with divorce papers while simultaneously pressuring Thomas through his ex-wife and his employer. I didn't want just a clean break. I wanted them both to feel the weight of what they'd done. Emily still acted like nothing was wrong, cooking dinner some nights, asking about my day. I played along, but every moment in that house felt like a lie. The bed where they'd been together was still there, mocking me. I started sleeping in the guest room, saying I had back pain. She didn't question it. The divorce papers were served to Emily at her office. Karen's process server caught her during a team meeting, handing her the envelope in front of her coworkers. I wasn't there, but Karen said Emily called her an hour later, panicked, asking to meet. Karen refused, directing her to get her own lawyer. That night, Emily came home early, her face pale. She didn't mention the papers, and neither did I. She moved her things to the spare bedroom without a word. The house felt like a war zone, silent but charged. Karen sent the HR letter the same day. She included stills from my security footage, showing Thomas entering my home during work hours, and a summary of his pattern of behavior. The company didn't waste time. Thomas was suspended pending investigation within 48 hours. Laura called me that evening. She'd heard through mutual contacts that Thomas was scrambling, trying to save his job. His reputation was crumbling, and he couldn't afford another legal fight. Laura's case was gaining traction too. Karen had found bank transfers Thomas made to an account linked to Emily, likely for their hotel stays and gifts. It was enough to argue he'd breached his divorce settlement. Emily's behavior changed. She stopped going to work, stayed home all day, and avoided me. Her phone was still glued to her hand, but the notifications had slowed. I checked the security app one night, and saw Thomas's SUV hadn't shown up since the HR letter. Their affair was unraveling, and they knew it. I kept my routine, work, gym, home, like nothing was happening. But inside, I was counting down. Karen was preparing to subpoena Emily in Laura's case, tying her to Thomas's financial misconduct. It would drag her name through the mud, maybe cost her job too. I started looking at the house differently. Every corner held a memory of betrayal. The kitchen where we planned vacations, the living room where we'd watched movies, the bedroom where she'd brought him. I contacted a realtor to get an appraisal. I didn't tell Emily. She was still in the house, but she wasn't part of my future. I wanted her out, the house gone, and both of them buried under the consequences. Karen said the divorce hearing was set for next month. I was ready. The fallout hit Thomas Reed harder than I expected. His suspension turned into termination a week after the HR letter. Karen got a copy of the company's internal report through her contacts. It detailed multiple complaints against Thomas, including my evidence and 2 other women who came forward after the investigation started. He'd been using his position to start affairs with subordinates, promising promotions or bonuses. The company didn't want a scandal and fired him quietly, but word spread. His LinkedIn went dark, and his professional network unraveled. Laura said he was persona non grata in the industry now, unlikely to land another VP role. Karen used this to strengthen Laura's case. She filed a motion to revisit their settlement, arguing Thomas had funneled company funds into his affairs, including the account linked to Emily. Bank records showed payments for hotel rooms, dinners, and a pair of earrings I recognized from Emily's jewelry box. The court agreed to hear the case, and Emily was subpoenaed as a witness. Karen warned me Emily might try to settle the divorce to avoid testifying. I didn't care. I wasn't negotiating. I wanted the house, my savings, and her out of my life. Emily's world was shrinking. She stopped leaving the house except for lawyer meetings. Her car stayed in the driveway, and her work laptop gathered dust. I overheard her on the phone one night, whispering, probably to Thomas. Her voice was desperate, not angry. I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd made her choices. I kept my distance, eating meals alone, working late to avoid her. The realtor came by when she was out, and valued the house at a solid price. I listed it without telling her. The sign went up the next day, and she didn't notice for 2 days. When she did, she left a note on the fridge asking to talk. I threw it away. Karen prepared me for the divorce hearing. She said Emily's lawyer was pushing for alimony, claiming she'd sacrificed her career for our marriage. It was a lie. She'd climbed the ranks at her firm while I supported her late nights. Karen had pay stubs and performance reviews proving it. I gave her everything: joint tax returns, mortgage records, even texts where Emily bragged about her bonuses. I wasn't giving her a dime. The divorce hearing was a cold, clinical affair. It took place in a beige courtroom with flickering fluorescent lights. Emily sat across from me, her lawyer next to her, flipping through papers. She looked smaller, her hair pulled back tightly, her eyes avoiding mine. Karen presented our case methodically: the affair, the evidence, the betrayal in our home. She showed the judge the security footage, the note, the bank statements. Emily's lawyer objected, saying the affair wasn't relevant, but the judge overruled. Infidelity mattered when it happened in the marital home. Karen laid out my financial contributions, paying the mortgage, covering utilities, funding Emily's car. She contrasted it with Emily's spending on Thomas: lingerie, hotel rooms, gifts. The judge didn't react, just took notes. Emily's lawyer argued she deserved half the house and spousal support. Karen countered with Emily's career trajectory and bonuses, showing she wasn't dependent on me. The judge set a follow-up hearing but granted my request for exclusive use of the house. Emily had to move out within a week. Laura's case against Thomas moved forward too. The court found he'd violated his settlement by hiding income and ordered him to pay Laura an additional $200,000. Emily's testimony was damning. She admitted to receiving gifts from Thomas, tying them to the hidden account. It cost her credibility in our divorce and her job. Her firm let her go after the subpoena, citing conflict of interest. She moved to her sister's place, leaving most of her things behind. I boxed them up and sent them to her. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple bought it, full asking price. I didn't tell them why I was selling. The closing date was set for a month out. I rented a small apartment downtown, a one-bedroom with bare walls. It felt empty but clean, like a fresh start. I changed my phone number and deleted my social media. Emily tried emailing me once, a long message about regret and wanting to explain. I marked it as spam. Thomas was a ghost now. Laura said he'd moved to another state, dodging calls from old colleagues. Their lives were in pieces, and I was just getting started.